Namaste, everybody, and welcome to today's program, 10 Minutes with Dr. Marc Halpern. That's me, and today we're going to be talking about the Purusharta, which are the four aims of life or the four goals of life. This is a really interesting topic because each one of us pursues life and we tend to do it without much thought. We don't know why we're motivated to do what we do. In yoga, in Ayurveda, and in all of the Vedic sciences, there's an understanding that there exists four fundamental aims or goals of life for each person. And we're going to talk about those today, just a bit of an introduction to it, if you will. So let's begin with the first goal of life. The first goal of life is called kama, or pleasure. Everybody likes to have a little bit of pleasure. This cup of tea is bringing me a little bit of pleasure right now. Pleasure is a legitimate goal of life. We experience pleasure through our five senses, and we're drawn to pleasure. We're also drawn to avoid that which will keep us away from pleasure, and particularly pain and suffering. Now, this is an important goal of life because pleasure is essential to the propagation of life itself. It's also essential to sustaining life. So, kama is the first goal of life. Now, this goal of life is the goal of the ego. The ego exists through our five senses. So we take in, through our five senses, those things that bring us pleasure. Now, there's nothing wrong with pleasure. Pleasure is wonderful. However, it also comes with a challenge, and the challenge is trying to control our desire for pleasure. And when we overindulge in pleasure, rather than that pleasure sustaining life, that pleasure begins to challenge life. It begins to create health challenges for us and other types of psychological and existential challenges for us. So it's important that while we're pursuing pleasure, that we don't overindulge in pleasure. Ayurveda teaches balance or harmony, not the avoidance of pleasure and not the indulgence in pleasure, but being able to balance pleasure. Now, the second goal of life is Artha, which is the goal of pursuing prosperity and material wealth. And certainly, to some degree, we're all motivated to accumulate things in life, to have those things that are necessary for being comfortable, whether it's housing or clothes or a car. We all want a certain amount of prosperity. Now, we may want different amounts, but we all want a certain amount of prosperity. Now, there's nothing wrong with the pursuit of prosperity and wealth. According to Ayurveda, it's natural. It's another goal of the ego, and each of us are going to experience that. The challenge comes, again, in overindulgence. If we overindulge in the pursuit of wealth, we can become greedy. And if we become greedy, that's going to create new challenges for us. So once again, Ayurveda does not deny the pursuit of wealth and prosperity, nor do we encourage people to overindulge in it. But once again, balance is essential. The third goal of life is Dharma. Dharma is our service. We all have some form of service to give to the world. So many of us pursue a career path. Now, there is nothing wrong with wanting to serve and nothing wrong with wanting to pursue those interests that you have and serve in the manner in which you desire. We can also overindulge in our desire to serve. And when we do, we can use our career or our method of service as a way of controlling the outcome or controlling people. We can become too overly focused on our career goals. If we become too overly focused on our career goals, that too is going to create a new set of challenges. So Ayurveda teaches that we should engage fully our Dharma, our path of service, and yet we also have to maintain balance. If we don't, then there will be consequences, including burnout and other consequences, perhaps in terms of our relationships with people. The fourth goal of life is moksha. Moksha is really the highest goal. Moksha means liberation. and it's liberation from the cycle of birth and death. And so Ayurveda and the Vedic sciences teach that we are all on cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. And we go around and around and around, and we, through this process, grow and learn and evolve until eventually we achieve self-realization. Upon achieving self-realization, we become liberated from the cycle of birth and death, and we become one with all of creation, and we experience the essence of bliss. We become the essence of bliss. We become one with all things. This is the highest goal of life, and this is not the goal of the ego. This is the goal of consciousness, or the goal, we could say, of spirit or soul. Now, for the first three goals, the pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of wealth, and the pursuit of our service to society, these tend to be goals that are easy to fall into traps with because the ego attaches very closely to them and challenges us to overindulge. It says, have more pleasure, accumulate more things. And through my career, maybe I can control more and achieve a higher status. And so the ego gets very involved in the first three goals. But the fourth goal, this is the goal of the soul. This is our highest goal, and it's often one that we give the least attention to because our ego is so interested in the other three, but not this one. So Ayurveda and yoga and the Vedic sciences teach us that in order to prevent overindulgence, we must pursue the fourth goal of life, which is our spiritual path. Only through the awakening of our spirit, through the awakening of our consciousness, can we control our desire for pleasure and achieve balance. Only through the pursuit of our spiritual path, of spiritual awakening, can we control our pursuit of prosperity and wealth. And only through the pursuit of our spiritual path can we control our journey toward service and therefore avoid the pitfalls of status. So Ayurveda, yoga, Vedic studies emphasize these four goals of life to help us to understand why we're here. We're all pursuing these four goals of life. Ayurveda and yoga teach that we must put our attention primarily on our spiritual goals. Only then will we have peace of mind and optimal health. In fact, there is a karma associated with the overindulgence in any of these goals in life. This can be called the Purusharta karma, and this means the karma we set into motion in this lifetime as a result of pursuing these four goals of life when we become overly attached to them. Now, it's easy to see how you can be over-attached to pleasure, to wealth, and to status. It's not so easy to see that you can also become over-attached to your spiritual goals. When you become overly attached to your spiritual goals, it creates spiritual arrogance. And spiritual arrogance will also create karma. What is spiritual arrogance? This is when you're so proud of your spiritual accomplishments that you think you're better than others. And it's a natural step along the spiritual path, and it is a pitfall that many fall into. So remember, on your journey towards self-realization, always remain humble. Know that we are all students and that we are all moving slowly but consistently toward our highest self. Many blessings to you on your spiritual journey. May you, through your spiritual awakening, be able to control your five senses in your pursuit of pleasure. Be able to have peace and harmony and control your pursuit of wealth. And may you always live in service, in alignment with the divine Shakti or energy that flows through you without the pursuit of status. And may you ultimately achieve self-realization. Namaste. Many blessings.